So what will Iran actually look like in, what, just a few short years? 2030?
It's a fascinating question, isn't it?
Yeah. Will the deep roots of its history kind of hold it firm, or will we see these, dreams of technological and social change really take off?
That tension is exactly what these documents explore.
Right. So today we're diving deep into two really interesting sources, analyzing Iran's possible 2030 future and Iran 2030, between roots and dreams,
They're essentially speculative blueprints trying to map out where Iran might be headed.
balancing that history with future hopes.
Mm.
And they look at everything: the economy, military, governance, society.
All the key pieces.
Our mission today really is to pull out the crucial bits, what you really need to know, and figure out what feels plausible versus what might be more aspirational.
Yeah, separating the ambition from the likely reality on the ground. Because some of these goals are, well, quite ambitious.
Okay, let's get right into it then. The economy first.
Makes sense.
Both reports seem to imagine an Iran in 2030 that's finally broken free from relying so heavily on oil.
Right, diversification. It's been a goal for a long time.
And they have this interesting twist suggesting that sanctions, weirdly, might actually be fueling innovation, like pushing exports in software and biotech.
That's a provocative angle.
Yeah.
The idea of sanctions as a catalyst.
Is there anything to it?
Well, look at biotech. There has been noticeable progress. Iranian medical biotech is getting exported to, over 30 countries now.
Really? Oh.
Yeah, and hundreds of biotech firms, supposedly exporting to nearly 20 nations. So something's happening there.
Why biotech specifically, though? Is it just, necessity being the mother of invention?
It could be specific investment, maybe a strong scientific base to build on, or perhaps fewer hurdles in that specific sector compared to others. It's complex.
But the reports don't just say sanctions are good.
Oh, absolutely not. They're very clear about the damage. One calls them the main enemy of Iran's progress. So it's not a simple cause and effect.
Okay. And the software export dream, how does that stack up?
That feels a bit fuzzier. The ambition is there, definitely.
But the numbers, I think I saw something from 2011. Exports were like $100 to $300 million.
Exactly. And even more recent figures, like that $1.3 billion for technical and engineering services.
That's a really broad category, isn't it? Could be anything.
Right. It's a big leap from that to being a major global software exporter, especially with sanctions still in place.
So the sanctions are more like a lid, really.
I think that's a better way to put it. A lid on accessing global finance tech markets. You'd likely need significant easing of those sanctions for true diversification, especially in high-tech exports, by 2030.
Okay. Now, what about this digital real idea?
Yes, the CBDC, central bank digital currency.
The vision is it's used inside Iran, it's trackable, maybe some limited international trade, using it through special deals.
That's the gist. And the key thing to grasp is that this isn't like Bitcoin. It's centrally controlled by the state.
So big brother currency.
Well, potentially more government oversight, yes. They've got pilot programs running. But its main purpose seems domestic efficiency, tracking, maybe financial inclusion.
But what about the international angle? They mention deals with Russia, BRICS, using local currencies, digital payments.
Those are definitely happening. Attempts to bypass SWIFT, work around sanctions.
So it is going international.
It's more about geopolitics than broad economic appeal, you see. These are specific, politically motivated arrangements.
Gotcha.
For the digital real itself to be widely accepted internationally for trade by 2030. That's a huge stretch.
Yeah.
Needs stability, trust, easy conversion, big hurdles.
So mostly domestic tool, maybe some limited barter-like deals internationally.
That seems much more likely for 2030, yes.
Okay, shifting to cities. Smart cities. The reports talk about Tabriz, Rasht, Yazd becoming these hubs.
Yeah, innovation hubs. Decentralized finance, digital services, clean energy.
Yeah.
Sounds very cutting edge.
Decentralized finance, that's like crypto-based finance outside banks, right?
Broadly, yes. Using things like blockchain.
So how realistic is this vision for Iranian cities by 2030?
Well, compare the vision to what's actually happening. The focus now seems much more practical.
Like what?
Digitizing basic public services, managing energy use better, some simple Internet of Things stuff.
Yeah.
Yazd is doing smart tourism, digital services. Tabriz has conferences on smart energy.
So improvements, but maybe not a revolutionary transformation.
Exactly. Incremental progress. The leap to becoming world-class hubs for things like DeFi, that's huge.
Why? What's missing?
You need a whole ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
Massive investment, tons of specialized talent, the right regulations, global connections. Those aren't really there at scale yet.
And DeFi specifically seems tricky.
Very tricky. especially when the government is pushing its own centralized digital currency. It seems almost contradictory at a fundamental level. Plus, the regulations and adoption just aren't there municipally.
So gradual upgrades more likely than global D5 hubs by 2030.
Seems a safer bet, yeah.
Okay, last economic point, reviving the domestic market. Lower inflation, stronger currency, a thriving middle class.
That sounds like the dream scenario.
It's absolutely critical and maybe the toughest challenge.
Because the current reality is not that. Not really. High inflation, weak real, a middle class that's really feeling the squeeze, struggling with basic costs.
Yeah.
Savings eroded.
The reports suggest policies to fix this.
They do. Managing liquidity, structural reforms, supporting local production, managing the exchange rate, the usual suspects. But so much depends on external factors. Sanctions relief first and foremost. Higher oil revenues, attracting foreign investment, just normal trade relationships.
Without those big external changes, internal tweaks won't be enough.
It seems unlikely they could achieve that full vision of revival by 2030 just through internal policy alone. It's deeply interconnected with the global situation.
Okay, let's pivot then. Military modernization. The reports talk about smart security. What does that actually mean?
It means leaning more on technology, intelligence, asymmetric capabilities, rather than just sheer numbers or conventional force.
Like cyber warfare.
Exactly. Building dedicated cyber defense units is a big focus. Protecting critical infrastructure, power grids, banks, transport. They know they're vulnerable.
Have they been hit before?
Oh yeah. Fuel stations, TV networks, municipalities. Those attacks highlighted the need.
So they're building up defenses.
They are. Iran's made progress, ranked reasonably on global cybersecurity indexes, but reports note they need more skilled people. So expect more sophistication by 2030, but it'll remain a target. Resilience is key.
And then there's the drone stuff. Networks of drones, automated surveillance. Sounds very sci-fi.
It's less sci-fi, more current reality being scaled up. Iran has a very robust and expanding drone program. Already, recon, attack, kamikaze drones, they invest heavily.
Used by different military branches?
IRGC, regular military.
Yeah.
And they're developing the automated systems too, sensors, radars, border surveillance using drones is already happening.
So by 2030, eyes everywhere.
Pretty much. A comprehensive network is highly likely. The challenge then becomes integrating all that data, countering other people's drones and countermeasures, and adapting strategy constantly.
The reports also mention a shift in defense doctrine. Smart deterrence, securing resources like water and soil.
This is really interesting. Active deterrence. Talk of second strike capability. It shows they recognize they can't match adversaries technologically head-on.
So they focus on things that make others think twice, asymmetric stuff.
Precisely. Drones, missiles, cyber, that fits the smart deterrence idea. And bringing resource security, water, soil into military thinking, that's significant.
Why?
It shows a recognition that environmental stress is a national security issue. Water scarcity, soil erosion. These can cause instability.
So the military might get involved in protecting farmland or water sources.
Potentially, yes. By 2030, we could see environmental security becoming a much more explicit part of their military doctrine and potentially expanding their roles on the ground.
Fascinating. Okay, let's turn to governance, this idea of flexible conservatism. What's that about?
It suggests an attempt to maybe create a bit more consultation, possibly some decentralization, but within the existing conservative framework.
And part of that is this National Assembly of Voices.
Yeah, envisioned as this consultative body, experts, academics, entrepreneurs feeding into policy.
Doesn't Iran already have bodies like the Expediency Council?
It does, and that's the core question, isn't it? What real power would this new assembly have? How would it interact with existing power structures?
So it could just be window dressing.
That's the risk. Without clear mechanisms to actually shape policy, it could just be another layer, without real teeth. Gaining meaningful influence is the challenge.
Then there's smart provincialism, elected governors, local autonomy. That sounds like a massive change.
It would be a profound shift. Right now, governors are appointed from Tehran, implementing central policies.
Though maybe ethnicity or politics plays a role in who gets appointed.
Sure, those factors are considered, but the system is fundamentally top-down. Elected governors with defined autonomy. That's decentralization on a scale they haven't seen.
What are the potential upsides and downsides?
Upside, maybe more balanced development, more local accountability. Downside, risks to national unity, policy coordination could become a nightmare. Potential for conflict between local and national priorities.
And getting there by 2030.
Requires major legal, maybe even constitutional changes. That's complex, potentially very contentious, a huge undertaking.
The reports also talk about elections, more openness locally maybe, but national restrictions remain.
That reflects the reality of Iran's dual system elected officials, but also unelected bodies, like the Guardian Council vetting candidates.
And local elections are already a bit different.
Historically, yes. Often more candidates, more focus on practical local issues. So seeing that continue seems plausible.
But can that local openness really bubble up to the national level?
That's the big question. With national candidates still being vetted centrally, it's hard to see how.
So new voices nationally might just mean more diversity within the accepted system, not necessarily opening up the system itself.
That seems a more likely interpretation of that vision, yes. True openness in national competition faces significant structural hurdles.
Okay, finally, let's look at social and cultural changes, women's roles, youth engagement.
Yeah, the reports paint a really interesting picture here, particularly for women.
How so?
They envision women as tech CEOs, mayors, leading scientists, even international negotiators.
And is that happening?
In some areas, definitely. The rise of women in tech, science, knowledge-based companies, the data shows a clear upward trend. Lots of female researchers, entrepreneurs gaining recognition. That professional advancement seems likely to continue.
But what about things like mayors or top international negotiators?
Less clear. Women are active on city councils, but female mayors, especially in big cities, seem rare. And while women are involved in delegations, they haven't typically held the absolute top spots in major international talks like the nuclear negotiations. It's emerging, perhaps.
And the most controversial part of the vision, optional hijab, accepted socially in big cities by 2030.
That would be a radical shift from the current situation with ongoing enforcement, even if it varies.
So not very likely.
It faces immense political and ideological hurdles. We might see debates shift, maybe focusing more on interpretations of modesty rather than the specific covering, or perhaps variations in enforcement in practice. But widespread, socially accepted optional hijab by 2030. That depends on deep changes not currently visible.
Okay. What about arts and media? This idea of soft freedoms, censorship exists, but people find ways around it.
That dynamic feels pretty stable, actually. It's kind of the status quo.
Censorship is still strong.
Deeply rooted, yes. Lots of films banned or cut, crackdowns depending on the political climate, but people are incredibly resourceful.
Using VPN, satellite TV, social media.
Exactly. That's the collective social intelligence the report mentions. Sharing restricted content, having debates online, the underground art scene.
So that push and pull continues.
Very likely. A gray area. Some things tolerated, especially online or in private, but direct challenges on sensitive political issues in mainstream forums. Still heavily controlled. Breaking barriers relies on those alternative platforms.
And finally, youth participation. The vision is they see a future building Iran from within, not just emigrating, more engaged locally, using alternative media, less street protest, maybe.
Suggests a shift, yeah. From open confrontation to maybe more channeled forms of engagement.
Are there channels for that?
That's the key issue. Official youth structures often lack real influence. But social media is huge for expression. And there are some small examples emerging of youth getting involved in local issues, like budget oversight.
But will it be enough to keep them engaged?
That's the dilemma. If they feel like building from within is viable, if they see opportunities and feel their voices matter, then yes, maybe the vision holds.
But if not?
Then the brain drain, the appeal of emigration, remains a huge concern. And the potential for frustration to build again. Sustaining youth engagement by 2030 really hinges on whether that participation feels effective and rewarding for them.
So pulling it all together, it's a really mixed bag for around 2030, isn't it?
Definitely.
Some clear potential like in tech, women's professional roles, maybe some smart city improvements.
Right. Areas where trends are already moving somewhat in that direction.
But huge hurdles remain. The economy fundamentally tied to sanctions, major governance shifts seeming unlikely, and deep social tensions like the hijab issue.
Exactly. The ambitious vision in these reports often bumps up against some very hard realities, both internal and external.
It really highlights that constant tension between the roots, the history, the established structures, and the dreams, the aspirations for change.
Precisely. And which force proves stronger in the coming years? That's the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it?
Which leaves a final thought for you, listening. In the story of any country, what ultimately shapes its path more? Is it the weight of its history, its roots, or the pull of its dreams for what it could become?
Something to definitely ponder as we watch Iran navigate the path to 2030 and beyond.
Absolutely. This has just scratched the surface, of course. We hope this deep dive gave you a clearer picture and maybe encourages you to explore these complexities further.
Because understanding these dynamics, even with all the uncertainty, is crucial. The future is never set in stone, but this kind of analysis helps us grasp the forces at play.